Okay. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining today's AMA with Philbert Poon. Before we begin today's session, we'll begin with an introduction. I'll let Philbert introduce himself a little bit about what he does, where he currently works. After his introduction, we'll go into the Q&A. Feel free to type your questions in the chat box, or you are able to unmute yourself and verbally ask your question. But I do ask, once you're finished asking your question, to mute yourself afterwards. But I'll let Philbert now introduce himself.
Hi guys, so my name is Philbert. You can just call me Phil if that's easier. So currently I'm working at Mercer in the consulting office. So Mercer is a management consulting firm that focuses on human resources benefit. It's one of the largest human resources consulting, and we do consulting for investment, mostly pension funds, endowments, or just investment manager searches and mutual funds research and all that kind of stuff. We also do delegated investments. So for the pension funds that don't want to do the investing themselves, they delegate their investment to us. So it's like a delegated CIO service kind of thing. We also do actuarial consulting. So that's really basically just the, you have pension plans like defined benefit pension plans, and the company promised future payments of maybe like thousands of annuitants that used to work for the company, and we need to value these liabilities. So that's done by the actuaries, which is me. We also have healthcare plans. So when people retire, the company promises health benefits, so we got to value those and do accounting reports and all that kind of stuff. We also do career consulting. So by career consulting, I mean executive compensation, how much a person should be paid for this position, the organization structure, what is the best way to achieve organizational efficiency, like stock options, how much should you award a CEO their stock options and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mainly focuses on the pension actuarial side. I do valuations, annuity purchases, annuity biddings, and investment consulting. And I've been at this company for about almost 4 years, 3.5 years now. And if it wasn't Ken's help, I wouldn't be here today. So thank you very much, Ken. Thank you again. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Thank you for the kind words. Maybe as we wait for questions in the chat box, can you share a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like? And if it's different every day, maybe some things that you typically would do on a day-to-day basis.
Before or after the pandemic?
Oh, both.
Both? Okay. So when it's before the pandemic, I would just, I usually reach the office around 10 o'clock. Get some coffee, get some breakfast. I would say in the morning, just reply. Usually we have a lot of emails coming in, so we have to reply to our clients first, and then we reply to internal emails. Usually we would have some meetings. If there are any kind of projects that we need to line up, we would talk to both the analysts, the interns. We also have a team in India that we delegate the work to, so we would have a chat with them as well before they go to sleep. And then, sometimes I'll go lunch with my coworkers, and afternoon is the time you do your spreadsheet, number crunching. Nothing too exciting, but every now and then we would also schedule some client meetings. Sometimes we would go to the client side. Sometimes they would come to us too. And yeah, that's basically it. But I mean, after the pandemic, we're pretty much working from home. We're not even allowed to go to the office. So yeah, there's not much of a difference, to be honest. It saves you the time to commute, which is a very good thing. Obviously, there's no coworker communication, meetings, everything is virtual, online, so there's that. But we're getting used to it. Well, actually, our company is very flexible, and we always allow working from home, so it's not like a super big change, but it's still there.
Nice. And you mentioned at one point in the afternoon before COVID, you're doing a little bit of number crunching using spreadsheets. What are some technical and some soft skills that are critical in your role, and what does that look like?
So technical skills wise, I'm not sure if you guys in the actuarial industry, you guys would know, but for actuaries, before they could sign reports, we need to complete our exams. So it's kind of like accountant or CFA, but instead of 3 exams, we have 9 exams and like 15 modules. So usually the company would give us paid days off to study. So some of the weekends I would just spend time, go to the library and, crunch these numbers. But so most of the technical stuff comes from these exams. Like these exams are very applicable. And of course, like the fundamental knowledge, the calculation I learned from school also really helped. It's mostly just models that were built and some programming, VBA, that was written before, and we make sure the program, the assumptions we put in is correct. We make sure the model is running as it should be, and we would generate reports. But I would say like maybe 40% of my job, 50% of my job relates to number crunching, like doing spreadsheets and stuff. The rest would be talking to clients. Now that's where the soft skills part come in. Naturally, I think in consulting, one of the most important skill set that you should have is like the ability to think for the client, right? So it's a very simple metaphor. When client asks you for something, right? Like they were like, "Hey, could you do this for us?" Well, you could immediately respond and say, "Hey, yeah, sure, no problem, we'll do it." But sometimes the client doesn't even know what they want, right? So maybe, for example, because of this COVID-19 thing, the client wanted to reduce cost, right? So they say, hey, could you cut this project? Could you not do this? And could you give us some cost projections? But maybe instead you could think about what they actually want. They want to cut the cost. So maybe we could do some strategic filing or government reports or something like that that help them reduce future contribution, pension contribution. So it's that kind of perspective that really can really benefit the client, not just like responding to what people tell you, but think about what they really want, right? I think
Right.
that's one of the key soft skills that you should have as a consultant.
Nice. And then we have a question in the chat box. Are you able to see it?
Let me see. Were you building intuition on modeling and client needs right when you for sure not. Like when I started, I mean, there's like a lot of the modeling skills came from what I learned in school and the programming assignments. I hope you guys paid attention in your programming assignments, if that's what you do. So yeah, a lot of that came from that. But when for the client needs, like from the start, you really wouldn't know until like you have maybe a year or two of experience. Um, there are actually many training courses outside that teaches you like these kind of skills. So I find them to be very useful. And I think that I also developed this skill when I was doing this student painting business. So it's one of those, many Ryerson students probably have heard about it, and I think we used to do some recruiting in Ryerson too. It's called Scholars at Your Service, or like College Pro. It's kind of like the College Pro kind of thingy. So I ran my own franchise painting business for a year. And I was very fortunate to be able to run the business and had 36% of the revenue in the Toronto team. So I hired 7 employees. I ran about a little less than 100K revenue for the whole year, and it was about 4 months of productions. But I did a lot of paintings. I had a lot of client complaints. I have employees leaving too, so many problems. But I think like throughout that year, because of my experience running a small business really gave me that intuition that I should really look at what the client need and not just what they ask you, right?
Nice. And maybe as we wait for more questions in the chat box. So you've been in the industry, or you've been at Mercer for roughly 3 or 4 years now. Can you talk about some of the challenges, excuse me, some of the challenges you have experienced in your career so far?
Challenges in my career. I think one of the challenges would probably be like working with so many different teams because like for one small project, right? Maybe it doesn't have to be small, large or small project. You would need like different stakeholder, right? Because you know you might know your part, but if that project specifically requires many different input from different department, that would be really challenging. I've had people that straight up just refuses to give me what I required because they're just not happy with the project manager. So that was pretty challenging. You know, you have to talk to that person, you have to persuade him, you have to ask him nicely, and you know, of course, different people want different things. So I think one thing I learned is to really cater everybody needs and really think about, you know, why is that person not responding to your request, and you know, just really get to understand the people that you're working with, right? Because yeah, sure, client could be a revenue for you, but the people working with you or for you also help you drive revenue. So technically, they are your clients too. So I think that's a very valuable insight that I've gotten throughout the years. Yeah, I think we have some other questions. If you were starting over again, what advice would you give yourself for the interview and job search process? So for this question, it's actually very interesting. Now, of course, Ken helped me with the interview. He taught me a lot, you know, how to properly do an interview, what to say, and what the employers are looking for. So if you guys are interested in that, I'm sure Ken will be able to help you on that. Now, with regards to the job search process, I remember 2 years ago before I got this job, I was struggling. My GPA was terrible. I have a 2.6 GPA, and I didn't have any actuarial exams completed. Like I was like the bottom of the applicant pool, right? And one thing I've learned to really stand out is you really need to put yourself out there. Employer, actually, GPA, I gotta say, it does matter, but it doesn't matter that much. Like not as much as you think. At the end of the day, the employer just want to hire someone who is useful and be able to contribute to their company. Having GPA doesn't a good GPA doesn't guarantee that. They just want a bright individual that can communicate with their clients, communicate with their team, be a successful project manager or a people manager in the future. And when looking at these qualities, right, to show these qualities, you need to actually talk to the hiring manager. Now, one thing that's very easy to achieve this is whenever there's an information session, go there, right? These info sessions is kind of like a event that help us, you know, assess the applicant pool, right? So if say there are 10 people that apply to the job and maybe 8 people show up to the information session, right? They don't even have to look at the resume for everybody now because they already have gotten a very good impression. And so if you really want to get that interview, go to the info session, talk to the hiring manager, talk to the people that matter, like actually have a conversation with them, try to understand what they're doing, like try to understand their day-to-day, try to understand what kind of people they're hiring for, and then sell yourself like, hey, I think you're looking for these kind of person. I think I'm a right fit because of this and this and that, right? That really helps you getting an interview. And once you have an interview, you prepare for your interview, you ace your interview, and the job is yours. Okay, what software do you normally use in your industry? So a lot of Excel. I think I find companies are still kind of like, you know, kind of old fashioned. So make sure you know your Excel, make sure you know your VLOOKUP, make sure you know your index match. I mean, it's 2020, like there's no excuse to not knowing Excel. You have to know Excel. Now, if you know VBA, obviously you stand out as a great applicant. But I think like nowadays, a lot of the companies are looking for people that know both Excel, like that is like for sure. If you know Python, I think it's a plus. I know many companies are trying to, you know, like make the process more efficient. So if you have the Python skill sets, that would really help. Okay, next question. Do you think being hired during COVID-19 might affect an actuary's career path? If Adam, you could explain more on this question, that would be great. I'm not sure I understood. But with regards to how many exams had you passed when you got hired, I got 2 exams. And then, well, and obviously that was like worse comparing to the Waterloo people, because when they graduate, they have like 5 exams and 5 internships. I didn't have any of that, right? So, like I said, to really get yourself out there, go to the info session and talk to the hiring manager and convince them why you're a good fit for the company, and not that person who has a 4.0 GPA and 5 exams and 5 internships. You got to convince them, right? Okay. Next question is, when did you start writing your actuarial exams? And can you talk about your experience with them? So I started writing my actuarial exams when I was in my 4th year. I really procrastinated. I thought that wasn't necessary. Companies would just hire me if I was, because there are many jobs out there, but I was wrong. Write your exams as soon as you can. Maybe start in your 2nd year or 3rd year. That really helps you get an internship. And once you get an internship and you do well in your internships, they will give you a full-time offer. I guarantee that. So do your exams early. Okay. Oh, and my experience with the exams. I think in general, they are manageable. I mean, some people find it very challenging. I think it's really just like the way you approach these exams. Now, obviously, you can't just think like these exams are your regular school exams, university exams. No, they're completely different. You might spend maybe 10 hours or 20 hours preparing for your final or midterm in school. But these exams, we're talking about 200 hours per exams. Like there's no slacking. Like you just have to put in these hours. And the way to approach these exams are crucial. You can't just like read the book and read the book for 200 hours and be done with it. That's not going to help. I guarantee you'll fail. You need to do practice exams. Spend 20% or maybe 30% of your time reading the book, but spend 70% of your time doing the exams, doing the questions, right? That is the way to go for all, regardless of actuarial exams, mathematics exams, or maybe like even computer programming exams whatsoever, because you need to build that muscle memory. You need to, like, when you see a question, you need to be able to know what you're doing right away. And to do that, you need experience working on these questions. Okay. What do I enjoy most about my job? I think the most I enjoy about my job is I'm naturally an extroverted person, so I really enjoy the aspect that I could communicate with clients and talk to them. I really enjoy the fact that, when they have problems, they come to you and say, "Hey, we're stuck at this, we're stuck at that. Are you able to help out?" And the fact that I could actually see the whole process of from the client sending a request to us working with the team, sending it to the manager for review, and going to the client meeting and presenting results. I think that the whole part is really satisfying, especially when you see like, oh, you actually helped out. Like the client was actually worried about maybe their investment, maybe their liabilities, and you presented a solution that helped them get rid of this problem and the relief. I really enjoy that experience, I think. Okay, what's more important in the long run, the geometric series or knowing the financial calculator? That is a very easy question. Absolutely 100% the financial calculator. I think what you learn in your Math 137 or whatever you call it, the advanced calculus or introduction to calculus, I'm 95% confident that it will not be useful in 10 years unless you're doing your research or you're doing a master or doctor program. Then, of course, you need to know those stuff. But I think in the workplace, you just really need to know your way around Excel because, well, actually, not even your calculator. We don't really use a calculator or anything like that because all the calculations is done in Excel. Like it's almost expected that you need to know Excel. If you go to work and you ask people what a VLOOKUP is, you're going to be in trouble. So make sure you learn that. Go on YouTube, do some practice. It probably takes like 20 minutes to learn very easy stuff. In what ways can student actuary modes help the person they report to? What kind of skill or quality should they display? So I think when you're junior, right? When you're just starting off your career, you don't know too much about what the company does and the work that the company do for the clients for consulting in a consulting firm standpoint. If you're in an insurance company, maybe they have very long-term projects that you're just part of that small little puzzle that trying to make the whole big engine work, and that's completely fine. I think what not just in actuary, but for any profession, you know, your manager will give you something to work on, right? Say, hey, could you get this assignment? Could you get this project done by a certain time, right? Uh, of course, you have to do it, but actually ask them, is there anything else I could help out with, right? Because most of the time, you know, they probably have like a 3 months project, and they're delegating pieces of work to different kind of people, right? So if you ask nicely, say, hey, could I get more exposure in this project? Well, they wouldn't say no, and you're helping them, and you can learn more too. And once you prove that you are capable, you get more work, you get more responsibility, and with more responsibility, they will promote you because naturally you're doing more work for the company. And I think that's the way to progress for junior analysts. Okay, do you think it's important to know how a company, do you think it's important to know how a company value exam pass versus experience in the field in terms of how they promote their actuaries? So in order to get a promotion in my company, at least, you need to get your destination, right? So that's why, like, I've always told people in the field, or just any people asking me that they want to become an actuary, you must finish your exams as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. Not only you're getting paid more money because you get a pay raise per exam passed, but you can sign reports, and that's very valuable to the company. And naturally, when you're able to sign reports, they will promote you, right? So exams are very important. Now, of course, having experience in the field is important too, right? Like, you know, you just can't have like 1 year of experience, but you pass all the exams, like, and not knowing what you're doing, like that's also not going to work. So I think it's very important to strike a healthy balance between the time you spend on writing exams and like putting in the time, getting the important projects, the work that you want to be doing, you want to be exposed to, and properly network in the company, right? Like, I mean, even before you got your job, you should network you should network externally. Talk to every company that you want to work, speak to the people that work at the company you want to work at, right? Um, I'm sure that's like, I'm sure Ken told you guys that. Now, the networking doesn't stop when you go into the company, right? Because to get the interesting work, to get the exposure that you want to, you need to have that person trust you. And that is why I'm actually doing three teams of work. I'm doing investment work, I'm doing wind-up work, I'm doing consulting work, right? So the network never stop, unfortunately, but that's just how it is. What kind of qualities does the company look for when hiring an employee? I think it really depends on what kind of company and what kind of employee they're looking for, right? They could have like drastically different, you know, kind of, like for example, it's easier to give an example. When you're hiring a programmer, you want that person to be good and capable of working independently without people's help and do all the programming and the technical stuff, right? When you're hiring a salesperson, you want them to be reaching out to people, going out and like, you know, have a strong network, because that's how you get sales. So I think it also really depends on you know, so that's like why it depends on the role. And for the company wise, if you're working in a startup, right, they are probably looking for people that has a mindset that wants to grow the business. But versus when you're looking at maybe a Fortune 500 company, maybe they just want to get somebody to do the job. So, like I said again, really get to know the hiring manager, talk to them, and see what kind of person they're looking for, and see if that position is actually suitable for you, right? Because obviously, you don't want to be doing something that you don't like, end up hating your job, and do a bad job and quit in a year. You don't want that to happen. In general, do you think the 3 month study window is reasonable to use for study schedule? Yeah, I think 3 months is pretty good. It's fine. Actually, I've done exams in 2 months window too, so it's not a problem. Um, I think it's not like the time you spend studying itself. It's more on the quality of the time you spend, right? So for example, you spend 8 hours studying, but maybe 2 hours or 3 hours of your time is going on Facebook and watching YouTube videos. Obviously, that's not going to help. Now, if you do it in 2 months, but you're really dedicated, like you make sure you have no distractions. You turn off your phone, you turn off everything, and you're actually doing questions, right? That's a completely different story. So there's not a specific time frame that you need to put it in. Just make sure you're making progress every time you finish your studying for the day.
Amazing. And that basically wraps up. Oh, there's one more question, I think. One
Yes,
final one.
it gets way harder than PNFM. PNFM is they are the easiest exams out there. And when you get to fellowship exam, they will give you mental breakdowns and anxiety attacks. So be ready for it. But I'm sure you like the first exam. It's always a learning curve, but once you get over it, like it's gonna be a smooth sail. I guarantee you. Once you pass PNFM, you will be so ready to write these exams that you won't even worry about you know, having to prepare for it or anything like that. Okay, with respect to all areas of knowledge needed for an actuary, how much of it is financial education or knowledge? I think a lot of it is actually financial. Goes to financial education and knowledge. I think it's you need a fundamental understanding of how the financial world works, right? Because as an actuary, you're not just doing integrals and doing numbers. You're helping the client or the company using actuarial skill sets to achieve financial success. So naturally, you need to know how that works. You need to know the time value of money. You need to know how a company make profit, how they will lose money. You need to know interest theory. You need to know how investment works. So naturally, I mean, it's a good thing to have for sure. I think that's probably, oh yeah, that's probably it.
Nice. And that basically wraps up today's AMA. If you do have questions for Philbert, Philbert, how can they connect with you?
Oh, just feel free to add me on LinkedIn and just send me a message and I'll reply.
Yep, there you go. Thank you, Philbert, for sharing your experiences and your wisdom today. All the questions, I was like, whoa, that's like definitely outside of like my scope, especially like the whole like geometric series and the financial calculator. It's like, oh, that's very specific.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the questions. And again, you can connect with Philbert on LinkedIn. Hope you have a great week and take care, everyone.
And I guess one last thing I want to add is I know how COVID-19 is affecting the situation, and like many people, like there are many hiring freeze and companies not hiring at this moment, and people are probably very worried what are they going to do once they graduate. I think my advice would be to go on LinkedIn and actually send messages to these people and have virtual coffee chats. You never know when these connections will be valuable to you, maybe 3, 5 years down the road. Okay.
I agree with that. Plus one to that.
Yeah. What position? Oh, just anything you want, anything you like.
Anything. Look up Mercer, look up any organization and find people working at Mercer or other organizations like Procter & Gamble, see position, and then send them an invite for a coffee chat.
Oh, what position should we? Oh, okay. In terms of people to speak to, you could talk to the hiring manager. You could talk to the analysts. The analysts usually are more open to discussing what they do on a daily basis. Plus, they actually have an impact on the hiring. You don't always have to go for the partner, the CEO, right? Yeah. Thank you, Ken, for organizing. Really appreciate it, and I hope I was able to help today. And feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your insight, Philbert. Super insightful.
Yeah, I hope you get to go to Colombia soon.
Thanks. I'll see you in Europe, baby.
Sounds good.
Okay. Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys. Stay safe. Stay safe.